Hello guys, so I would like to welcome you to my TED Talk, and as you can see, I want to talk about how we live in our cities. First of all, I would like to start by maybe looking at the term the concrete jungle, which we hear so often when talking about the city. We can hear it in songs, for example by Jay-Z and New York, singing about New York. However, I really like it because it reveals just so much about how we think of cities and how our relationship with the city is formed. First of all, maybe let's look at what the word concrete really means. It's something rather inhuman, something dead, and something cold. However, our cities are so much more than that. The jungle, on the other hand, creates a feeling of mystery, of danger, and of anonymity, something that we might attribute to the cities and the places where we live. However, cities are very complex structures and systems that are a result of the work of society over many years. And maybe I would like to start by a quick show of hands. How many of you live in Warsaw? So as we can see, it's the overwhelming majority, and Warsaw is is the largest city in Poland. However, there are many challenges related to city living all around the globe. First of all, however, I would like to start maybe with my own personal experience with a city. I lived in many different parts of Warsaw. I started by living in the city center, where I lived for the past 11 years. However, then I moved to Wilanów, and then I moved to Wawer, which is a suburb around Warsaw. And this really changed how I think about the city. Living in a suburb has taught me that public transit that is accessible and frequent is something that we often take for granted, but that is not the case in many places. It showed me how car reliance works, and how, although I commute 1 hour to school every day, if I were to have a car, I could just do that trip in 18 minutes. And this made me think about why is it that the city where I live makes my life so much harder just because I do not have a car. And so I decided to do some research online, looked into YouTube, and discovered that there's a whole genre just discussing about how we could improve our cities to make them better. And it made me also realize just how many areas of life how the city is designed impacts. But there are many challenges related to city living. Starting with some UN estimates, the UN estimates that currently around 57% of people live in cities, and that by 2050 is expected to increase by 68%. This rapid urbanization requires that many utilities that are currently lacking be provided to all those people moving. The fastest rates are happening in Africa and Asia, where millions of people are moving to cities every year, and they require water, sanitation, roads, and also public transit. But the current change that is going on is not fair, as 1.1 billion people currently live in slums. Although cities occupy 3% of the land, they emit 75% of emissions, and in half of the global population has no access to public transit at all. For these reasons, sustainable cities and communities were designated a UN development goal. And it all shows that the way that cities are currently changing is not fair, sustainable, and that the cities need to be made more livable. Currently, development remains reliant on the car. However, the headline cost of the car, what we see in the ad when they advertise the Toyota or they advertise the new Hyundai model, is actually far from all the costs that are associated with a car. As a study conducted in Germany that aimed to look at the cost of the car has estimated that the price of the fuel, the insurance, the taxes, and the parking fees would all add up to around 6,700 euros per year. This was for an Opel Corsa. However, when they looked at bigger cars such as a BMW, that cost almost doubled. However, that is not just the only cost of owning a car. There are other costs that also are associated with it on the societal level, such as the cost of air pollution and noise, which negatively affect the health of citizens, land use and infrastructure, where by land use I mean that in places that are currently dedicated to parking, there could be new businesses or apartments constructed to help fight against the cost of living crisis. However, due to the land use being dedicated to the car, that is not an option. Additionally, the car creates a barrier effect whereby it blocks people from freely walking about the city, which negatively impacts businesses. And uncompensated crashes and climate change all create costs that are not directly associated with the car, but that all contribute to the fact that around 4,674 euros per year are spent on subsidizing the car. This effectively means that society subsidizes 41% of the car, and although electric cars might seem like an option at reducing the emissions, they still do not tackle the challenges posed by the fact that they still require large infrastructure and they use up a lot of space. But let's think. However, there are several challenges that the current model of However, there are several challenges that the current model of car dependency creates. Let's look at some case studies. Looking at the city of Detroit, which currently is over 30% of its land in the downtown is occupied by cars. This totally annihilates the city grid, as people cannot freely walk around the city, as parking lots occupy large areas, and this negatively impacts businesses and also delves into that housing affordability crisis, and it might be one of the driving factors why Detroit has lost a large bit of its population. This also elevates land values in the area. Freeway construction, on the other hand, has been a necessity in many car-centric communities, and it led to the destruction of many communities that previously existed. It displaced numerous people, mostly from low-income houses. During the interstate construction in the United States, low-income communities were severely disadvantaged, as highways were often planned through the center of those communities, dividing them and separating families from each other. And the freeway effectively worked as a river, as it also requires a bridge to cross, and it didn't allow people to freely move about the city. Additionally, the growth of the highway then contributed to the growth of the suburb, which have many negative effects. Often the term coined to describe the growth of suburbs is suburban sprawl, which is the uncontrolled growth in the area of a city. And it excludes people without a car, as the low density of development doesn't make solutions such as public transit affordable for the city to employ, as they require a certain volume of passengers to actually be sustainable. And however, car infrastructure also requires changes and upgrades. In the last decade, the Texas transportation system has pumped more than $2.8 billion into widening the Katy freeway, and by the end, it had an astounding 23 lanes. However, although there was a large cost associated with it, the project had little effect, as by the end, the traffic was almost as bad as it was before. Although it might seem intuitive that widening a road would reduce the traffic, that is actually not the case, as because of induced demand, whereby by increasing a supply of a certain good, in this case the space on the freeway, we encourage the habit associated with it, in this case driving, which in the end led to the fact that the same amount of people, the traffic was equally bad as before. However, different modes of transportation have different efficiencies related with them. When we look at cars, to transport 1,000 people, we would need 666 cars, which you could say, if you believe in those things, is a satanic number, which rather gives a bad idea about the car. However, when we talk about buses, you would only need 29 buses. When we talk about trams, you would need only 17 trams, as the tram can carry as many as 60 people. And when we talk about trains, they are really the efficiency masters, as you would only need 3 of them. As over 50% of trips are taken under that are taken globally, that were taken in the USA, according to the USA Transportation Bureau, over 50% of them were under 3 miles, which is about 5 kilometers, which means that there is high potential to reduce those trips and remove a large bit of emissions that are because of those short distances that we are required to use a car for, which we could easily replace with a bike or with a public transportation trip. However, I would like to consider what actually makes a good city. First of all, it's the economy of the city. A city is mostly known for its good job market and its economic potential that it provides, as it attracts industry and creates a lot of jobs. However, only focusing on that side of the city makes it the concrete jungle that we dislike to live in, because the societal aspects might be overlooked. And it is important that we also think about the accessibility and convenience of those services, as without that aspect, the city is not fair. Additionally, we need greenery and recreation, safety and peace to feel comfortable in the place where we live, as we also spend free time in the city, and we do not only work in the city. I would like to look at a certain example of how actually we can bring change to the cities where we live. In the Netherlands, although the Netherlands struggled with similar problems as many cities around the globe, with high traffic and with increasing space being dedicated to cars, with highways cutting the cities in half, and with highway construction projects taking up billions of dollars, the Netherlands, this all resulted in the death of over 500 children per year because of traffic accidents. This resulted in a large protest movement that was initiated by an MEP, Marty van Putten, who later became an MEP and was known under the slogan of stopping the kindermoord. The kindermoord, in a direct translation, would mean stopping the child murder, and it had protesters protesting with bikes against the car and against negative the negative effects that the car brings. The political protest combined with the oil crisis created enough political pressure for the Netherlands to actually pursue changes in how they design cities. What they decided to prioritize was traffic calming initiatives, while prioritizing alternative modes of transport. The needs of cyclists had to be taken at every stage of the planning process, and urban areas were frequently organized as woonerfs, which basically means living streets, whereby there would be additional greenery, the road would be narrow, and the space for pedestrians would be increased. The Netherlands also employed a standard-based approach, whereby in the road design, conflicts between different types of road users would be eliminated, however with priority for pedestrians. As a result, cycling was made both objectively and subjectively the best way to go around the town, as towns were designed with limited parking possibilities in the city center that effectively discouraged the use of the car. In modern times, there are many concepts that are associated with city living. First of all, I would like to look at the 15-minute city concept, which has been incredibly popular in today's society and is often a driving factor behind many changes that we can currently see in our cities. The 15-minute city concept was developed by Carlo Moreno, and it basically states that all the necessities for your daily life should be within a 15-minute walk or bike ride. This concept is nothing really new. You probably can experience that in the places where you live. However, coining this name resulted in the fact that people had more awareness about the fact that the places where we live often might lack certain necessities, and that we are forced to use a car, which might be the case in, for example, suburbs. And through car-oriented design and through reducing the need for the car, that it is supposed to stimulate economic activity, as pedestrians were proven in studies to spend more money in local businesses, as they can walk and they walk next to them and they can visit them, whilst drivers usually just pass through and go home. It additionally improves mobility, as without the need for the car, people that cannot afford it can have equal access to those jobs and the services and the benefits of the city. The concept can be seen taking different forms around the world. For example, in Paris, it involved the narrowing of streets and increasing cycling infrastructure, while additionally adding greenery along the road. And in Barcelona, it was in the form of superblocks, which were 9 blocks that were combined together in a 3x3 grid with reduced speed in internal roads, and additional pedestrianized environment, new greenery, and kindergartens that were supposed to foster a sense of community in local residents, whilst also encouraging economic activity. And we can also see it in Warsaw, where we are currently, as with the new Warsaw City Center, the local government is planning to narrow arterial roads in the city center and increase public transit capacity, so that the negatives of the car and the fact that the car is largely cuts up the main arterials, cut the city in different parts, can be changed into a more sustainable way. Although these changes may be very politically unpopular in certain cases, I hope that the fact is that you might now know some of the negative costs of the car and why it isn't the way to pursue building the cities of the future. I hope it gives you a better idea. And through the quote, and I would like to summarize this presentation with the quote. A developed country is not a place where the rich have cars. It is where a developed country is not a place where the poor have cars. It is where the rich use public transportation. And it was made by the mayor of Bogota, Pedro. Thank you.